Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Surah Yunus, chapter 10, verses 103 to 109 will be covered today. With this presentation, Surah Yunus will come to an end. Type of psyche needed for the system of Deen. A number of points are covered in these verses on which we will reflect. These are the references, and this is our contact in case there is any question or query. Verses 93 to 102, recap. Before the establishment of the system of Deen, follow the procedure and process noted in the Quran. Provide education, training, and self-development to those who have the potentials to work for the system. During this process, never let yourself fall into any kind of doubt regarding Haqq and Deen, and take steps to strengthen your Iman by remaining firm on this path of Allah. Refer to the Quran to get guidance on a continuous basis and keep reminding of the consequence of going against it. And this is important, that we should keep reminding ourselves before making any decision that what will be its consequences. Those who are at the helm of affairs need to be completely focused and never let their guard down. Otherwise, things can go off track through those who are not fully committed, are weak-hearted, and give up on the way. And this is a very important point in the establishment of the system of Deen, because Quran has guided us all along that people must have a very strong Iman and must do solid deeds to strengthen their character and conduct. Keep reminding yourselves of the rise and fall of previous nations, which should include your own past state of humiliation and misery at the hands of non-Deen systems. And Quran does ask us to keep reminding ourselves where we were and where we are and where we are going. Mankind is the product of a deliberate and carefully thought out creation by Allah, and the whole purpose of providing choice and intent is to make each person accountable. Being conscious of this accountability helps to develop self, as a consequence of which a Jamaat Momineen will emerge, which then carries out tasks in the world on behalf of Allah. Always keep this aspect in mind and never lower your intrinsic value as a human being. Because if we know our own value as a human being and we appreciate it, then we should work to get best out of our own latent potentials. Verse 103, the first verse of this presentation, Momineen need to do their tasks without fear. Summa nunajji rusulana wallazina amanu kazalika haqqan alayna nunjil mu'mineen. Meaning, say to them that when the time for the outcome of deed arrives, then from this destruction, the messengers of Allah and the Jamaat of their companions remain protected. This is because keeping this Jamaat protected is mandatory according to our law. Further reflections on this verse. As humans, we have been endowed with three basic instincts. Firstly, self-preservation, that is the desire to preserve ourselves, to protect ourselves. Secondly, self-aggression, that is a kind of a defense against any external threat. And thirdly, self-procreation, because as animal, we reproduce as well. We would like to have children in this life. And this is a very biological process. These are at the biological level of our existence, i.e., all animals have these instincts. Employment of these three within the umbrella of the Quranic value system is for the Jamaat Momineen. The Quran recognizes these instincts as Allah has created us and has told us for our guidance that He knows the secrets of every human heart and mind, and has informed us that without the guidance of Wahi, we will always live life either at the animalistic level or even worse than animals. And this is very important because under the secular system, people think that if they are going to die with death and there is nothing beyond their death. And as a result, the only way to live is to just take care of the needs of the physical body. The self does not come into it. We can never rise to the human level without the guidance of the Quran. This statement apparently looks impossible to accept, but if it is examined closely in light of our own psyche and frailties, then the reality starts to become revealed clearly to us. In this verse, the Quran states a permanent value for our benefit, informing us that once we become Momin as defined by the Quran and form a Jamaat, we become an important entity which gains a higher value on the path of striving for the cause of Allah. These Momineen need to consider themselves protected, that is, observing all precautions, as now they are striving for the cause of Allah. In any case, they should be very conscious of their own protection and security, because they have become very important entity. And since they are on this path, and they have gone onto this path after a lot of hard work on their part to study the Quran and then come to this path and leaving everything, all belief system, they got rid of all the belief systems which they previously had. And it's a great achievement. They themselves become highly aware of the need for arranging protection and security. More reflections on this verse. What does it mean when the Quran states that Nunajji Rosalana Wallazina Amanu? It simply means that when the punishment due to the evil deeds of people arrives, and for which Momineen have all along warned them, then seeing the impending arrival of this punishment, Momineen recognize its signs in the light of Wahi and leave the place. And they also take precautions. We see many examples of this quoted in the Quran. For example, in the case of Hazrat Lut, when the nation had exceeded all bounds and their annihilation was due under the law of requital, he was instructed to leave the place together with other Momineen. His own wife did not believe in this and became eliminated together with the rest, while Lut escaped from this disaster and moved to a safer place. Similarly, in the case of Hazrat Nuh, when he and the Momineen with him boarded the ark and escaped the overwhelming flood about which Allah had warned him in advance, his nation did not heed this warning, and so had their earthly lives cut short. The issue for us to understand is that we should keep following the path of the Quran within the constraints of the man-made systems and gradually gain strength. Since we know life does not end with death, hence fear of death should never restrict what we can do. Next verse, 104, the Quran eliminates every doubt. I will go over the meanings. Say to these people that if you are still suffering from doubt regarding the truth of the system of life presented by me, then there can be no effect on my conviction due to this doubt of yours. It cannot happen as a result that I adopt the obedience and rule of those forces whom you accept as possessors of authority and control other than Allah. I will only adopt the rule of that Allah, the state of whose authority is such that never mind other things, your own death and life is also connected to his law. I am directed by him that I stay in this very Jamaat which has Iman in the truth of his laws. And the Quran sums it up, this verse sums it up beautifully. وَأُمِرْتُ أَنْ أَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. How much strength of conviction this is stated from the lips of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Further reflections on this verse. This verse addresses mankind and invites them to look at the Quran and the guidance it presents about the system of Deen. Implicit here is the message that you need to question the system of which you are a part, and then examine the system which is presented by Allah, and then see how it will transform your life since it is based on Al-Haq. In fact, this is the way you should study the Quran as well, right from beginning, that what alternative system and values are presented by the Quran to the man-made system. And we should also keep it in mind that why man-made system is exploitive and enslaves others. And that is important for us to understand that how much more freedom we get through the system of Deen. Here we are asked to make this declaration that, firstly, if you are in any doubt about it, be rest assured I am not in any doubt, as I have eliminated all doubts before proclaiming it to you. Secondly, I do not accept the rule of those man-made laws which you are following willingly and for which we have no authority from Allah. And that is important, because while living in the man-made system, we don't have to follow it willingly. So becoming unwilling is the first stage of it. Thirdly, I follow that Allah, according to whose laws is your own life and death. You all know that none of you is going to be around in this world forever. Physical death is part of your physical makeup, and you will die. What if all this turns out to be true and there is accountability for yourself and there is another life after you die? What are you going to do about it? Death is a fact of life. Quran frequently draws our attention to this fact so that we do not we do not forget that we have a finite time in this physical existence. More reflections. I have become a Momin through my own free choice and will remain as such even if you do not wish to join on this path of Allah's Deen. Another important point noted here by the Quran is that success comes through working together as Momineen, i.e. those who have full conviction in the Quranic system of Deen and they never waver in their resolve. This verse also points to the issues of the human psyche. Whatever path we take in life, we do not wish to be isolated, as this starts to create doubts about whether the path taken is correct or not. If we find another one going in the same direction, we feel more reassured. Here Allah has asked us to acquire this firm conviction from the Quran that the path taken is the only true path. This means that in order to assure ourselves, we have to do a lot of inner reflection, study, discussion, questioning, and look around at the world. At the same time, study the Quran ourselves and relate its teaching and values to the events of life around us. Now we go to next two verses, 105 and 106. Cognitive contamination is shirk. We have gone over shirk previously as well, but it's a good reminder noted in these verses. I'll go to the meanings and turning my attention away from every other direction to focus it on this system of life and not to become among those people who turn to different powers for various aspects of life and who also include non-divine laws with the laws of Allah. My message to you too is that do not forsake Allah and adopt obedience to these powers whom you consider as possessor of control and authority due to your blind faith, whereas the reality is that they simply do not have this power that they can provide you with any benefit or loss. If you do this, then you will also become among those who adopt rebellion against the laws of Allah, and you are well acquainted with their end. Further reflections. After a staunch declaration of being a Momin, now Allah has reaffirmed His instruction, informing us to remain steadfast on this selected path, which is straight, balanced, and established, and will never let anyone down. The important point is to keep this in our heart and mind that we need to be totally committed to this path and remain in the company of others who are also committed to this path in the cause of Allah. The term used here is Haneefan, i.e. after leaving the wrong path to get on to the correct path, to move away from every non-Allah law and path towards His laws. And that is have to be absolutely focused. Every moment is Haneef. Then the Quran cautions us to remain wary of any contamination, wavering, and distraction on this path, as this will result in weakness in our resolve. This will be a great injustice to our own self. There will be no loss or harm to Allah. Because if we have come to this path, then reasoning demands that we should be fully focused so that we get maximum benefits of this life as well as get on to a higher stage of life in the hereafter. The next point needs a profound reflection and awareness, not to look towards any non-Allah power or force once we are on this path, but then we live in a man-devised system, so how to address this issue? Here the Quran demands that we put our intellectual reasoning into a very analytical mode. If we recall, Musa and Harun faced a similar situation. What did they do? More reflections on these two verses. We need to first feel the need to acquire Iman as noted in the Wahi of Allah. First of all, to be dissatisfied with the man-devised systems and feeling the need for something better than this and searching for this. Unless we acknowledge the need for another system and we are not happy with the existing state of affairs, we will not fall in the category of those who seek guidance. And this is a very important point. I went through it very carefully in the light of my own experience and study, that how do we convince ourselves of the guidance of the Quran? And the first thing is we have to be unhappy in the conditions in which we are living and which are based on the man-devised systems. An important aspect here is that looking for some improvement within the existing man-made setup is not the same as looking to having it replaced with a better system. It looks like a big revolutionary step, but it is all possible. It is placed within our grasp by the Quran, because Allah has said that He is the source or fountainhead of all power. Then come to Wahi and think rationally through this over a period of time and reach this conclusion that this recipe is for me. Here comes the second step of finding out more about this Iman and understanding the finer aspects of Wahi and its application in the world. We take time to understand the applications of the permanent values, for example, the functioning of the law of requital and the law of respite. The issue of shirk is important to understand as it demands a precise change in our outlook and conviction. In order to convince ourselves of the 100% success of our striving under the direction of Wahi, we need time and evidence through carrying out solid deeds and for their results to manifest in the outer world. Continuing more reflections, the Quran used this phrase noted here, وَلَا تَدْعُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكَ وَلَا يَضُرُّكَ. Do not call on any other than Allah. Such will neither profit you nor hurt you. Very powerful statement from the Quran, but it is based on fact as well as it provides the evidence as we go along this path. What exactly does this mean in a man-made world where we do see that people in power can harm us as well as provide benefit if we toe their line? If we do not fully grasp the human psyche to which Allah is appealing in this phrase, then we will remain laden with doubts and uncertainty as to whether by giving space to the Wahi of Allah in our mind, we can attain any benefit. And that's the something which we have to deal with. Because we have to tell ourselves, this is the only path I'm going to follow, and keep reminding ourselves, because that is how the Quran asks us to keep repeating it in our head, so that our conviction becomes extremely strong. Here the Quran itself helps by stating that acquire Quranic Iman, and then as a consequence of this Iman, do salih deeds. And that is important. It should not be mechanical. Not mechanically, but with the emergence of an inner urge to do this, i.e., if this desire does not arise, then Iman has not yet been acquired. This aspect becomes evidently clear if we look at all the verses addressed to Momineen. Whatever follows is part of the manifestation of those attributes of Momineen. For example, Quran says, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha wabtagu ilayhil wasilata wa jahidu fi sabilihi la'allakum tuflihun. O those who have accepted Iman, do your duty to Allah. And doing that duty not under compulsion, but willingly, through our own choice. Seek the means of approach unto Him. That is, go through the Quran and find out what does it mean. How do you go forward? How do you come together? Remove your differences. Become one Jamaat whose hearts are united, and then see how things start to fall in place. And strive with all in His cause so that you prosper. 10:107, come to grips with the laws of Allah and enjoy the benefits. I will go over the meanings. Remember, if you are faced with any trouble due to the law of Allah, then no one in the universe has this authority that they can rectify that trouble. That is, going against, counter to His law. It will only become rectified in accordance with His law. And if there is some benefit about to reach you according to His law, then there is no such power which can stop it. There is no exception in this for anyone. Whichever individual wishes to acquire a state of good according to this law can achieve it. He will definitely receive that benefit. Remember, whether these are the means to remain protected from harms or causes for nourishment, all are connected to His law. Further reflections on this verse. What is stated here in this verse is also based on evidence even under the man-made system. If we know the functioning of the prevalent system under which we live, then we know how to get things done in that system. In countries which have a well-organized system of administration and management, the general public is also educated, and so individuals face fewer problems in getting things done. In countries where there is not an organized system and there is a lack of accountability, the ordinary man faces problems. However, even under such a system, people who have knowledge of how the system functions can figure out how to resolve issues of life. Here the Quran is pointed to this fact that since everything in the world follows the laws of Allah, we need to ensure that people are clear about how the human system follows the law of requital and the law of respite. We can see law of requital and law of respite functioning even under the man-made laws, because over there as well, what we do, it has consequences according to the system in which we live. We should not take this impression from this verse that Allah is directly interfering in the human system. Not at all. Whatever human beings do individually or collectively has consequences. So we need to understand how the systems function, how these are put together by man-made laws. And then we will understand that what are their weaknesses, what are their strengths, and how do they solve human problems. The issue presented by the Quran is this, that establish the system of Deen as per its guidance, and then everything will become smooth and predictable. Next verse, 108, Allah's declaration for mankind, clear, crisp, forthright, no scope for any zan. Man is fully responsible for his actions in this world. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ قَدْ جَاءَكُمُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنِ اهْتَدَىٰ فَإِنَّمَا يَهْتَدِي لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ ضَلَّ فَإِنَّمَا يَضِلُّ عَلَيْهَا وَمَا أَنَا عَلَيْكُمْ بِوَكِيلٍ. O Rasool, announce to the whole of mankind that code of life has arrived from your Rabb, which is based on truth. If you adopt the journey of life according to its guidance, then it will be your own self that will benefit from this. And if you adopt other paths by forsaking it, then its harm will also be applicable to you alone. Now, it is reliant on your own decision which path you wish to adopt. I am not sent as a guardian over you that I should make you tread on the straight path. A number of points covered in this verse, and the law of requital is explained extremely well. Take responsibility for your actions and make right choices using the Quran. This verse clears any doubt about the functioning of the law of requital, where each person is made aware of the importance of making correct choices in life. And this is important that we share it with others. We let others know again and again, including our family, friends, and our acquaintances. And even when we go on the internet and wherever we are putting comments, we should talk about the law of requital and individual responsibility and accountability. This verse needs to form part of the school syllabus at the primary school level so that children understand the importance of making the right choices and decisions in their life. It will help to turn them into responsible citizens of the world. And we should teach this to our children as well and keep reminding them so that it becomes part of their psyche. Firstly, by addressing mankind, it announces the arrival of Haqq, i.e., suffering caused by man-made laws will end if this is followed, as it will always produce constructive results, good for the whole of mankind. Secondly, since it is from Rabb, it will help develop yourself by putting you on the path of Rububiyyat. Thirdly, there is no compulsion on anyone. Allah simply will not compel anyone. And this thing we should take out of our mind, or if it resides anywhere in psyche, that Allah will interfere in human matters. It is through His laws that we operate, and it is through His laws that we get things done. And this point should be communicated to others as well. And it is up to each one of you to make a choice in favor of the guidance of Wahi. All these supplications and prayers which we do provide us inner strength. These are good for our psychological motivation so that we get onto this path and then stick to it. If you decide to follow this path, then this will be for the good of your own self. And since it is about the transformation of your psyche, it will start to manifest in the outer world. Do this and then see how the world around you transforms into a new world. Fourthly, if it does not appeal to someone and they do not wish to opt for this path, then according to the Wahi of Allah, it will lead to not being guided on the correct path, and such people will then go astray as per the law of Allah. This means that they will live this life at a physical level, but will not acquire a developed self, hence they will have no life in the hereafter. And we can look at verse 8:24, and the Quran is very clear on this. It keeps drawing our attention to this aspect. Allah will never compel anyone to adopt the path of Wahi, as this is against the purpose of human creation, which is predicated solely on the principle of free will. Fifthly, each one of you needs to understand that no human being has the authority to force anyone to go against their choice. The way man is created, no one can force a decision on any one of you. Thoughts and decision making is designed in such a way that no other human being can have any access to the hearts and minds of others. And what we see in our world, in the man-made system, is that people do get carried away, but it is because they are not fully conscious of their own inner strength and their own choice. And a lot of times these economic compulsions force people to do wrong and and start following those who are rich and powerful. Sometimes they have to follow it because of their jobs. And this is coercion. This is tyrannical according to the Quran. And that is why Quran says, establish Deen so that people make informed decisions based on their own rational reasoning. And they should never follow something in which they are not fully convinced. The whole purpose is to hold each one of you accountable for what you do, and when you select the path of Wahi, then your eye develops in that precise way which then meets the criterion of the life of the hereafter. It also starts to transform into that exact eye, which then becomes eligible for the aid of Allah for the system of Deen in this world. Now we go to the last verse of this surah and of course of this presentation. 10:109, patience and perseverance is a must on the path defined by the Quran. وَاتَّبِعْ مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْكَ وَاصْبِرْ حَتَّى يَحْكُمَ اللَّهُ وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الْحَاكِمِينَ. Pass this message on to the people and keep obeying this code, the Quran, which is given to you via Wahi, and remain firm-rooted on it until the time that the law of requital of Allah makes a final decision between you and these opponents. He is the best to decide. The path illuminated by Wahi is brightly lit. Here Allah has summed up the whole mechanism of the connection of Wahi with the aspect of development of the human self and what the human psyche needs to register for all times. The Quran reiterates the importance of Wahi at many places so that we do not allow it disappear from our vision. This is why reminding is an essential part of being on this path. For example, in Surah Al-Asr, Quran says, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Remind each other about haqq and sabr. And this has to be done on a continuous basis. And that is why we have started this series of presentations and meetings so that we keep reminding each other. Firstly, it is made clear that this Wahi must be followed and it must be without compulsion to achieve all that is described in the preceding verses. For example, the issue of haqq and batil, freedom from slavery and the destruction of Pharaoh, that is of batil systems, education and training of those who have opted for this path, unity of hearts and one aim, apprising yourselves with the final details of the system of Deen. Because human beings take time, one. Secondly, they may not be able to grasp everything at the same time. So that is why it is important that we keep reminding each other. If someone has missed one point, then others can remind them. Secondly, to acquire that psyche which understands the need to persistently strive and to never give up, and also to be aware of the long time scale involved on this path. In any case, why should we start looking for quick results if we have Iman in our own self's potential to survive physical death? Further reflections on this verse. On this path of Allah or of Deen as a system, the issue is not about getting quick results. The issue here is of understanding the laws and commands of Allah. If you still have the urge for quick results, then you need to understand that yourself has not yet acquired the requisite eminence where the Quran is adequately grasped as a system of Deen. The path defined by the Quran will be followed by those who have understood the significance of the recipe of Iman plus solid deeds and its connection with the acquisition of power and the system of Deen. We have gone over this aspect previously as well, but I thought just to reiterate it because over here we have seen a procedure, a process emerging in the case of Hazrat Musa and Harun and Bani Israel. Looking for quick results also indicates that you still think that your life will end with death and you are keen to see success before you die. Overcoming this kind of thinking is part of transforming ourselves into a self with new life. In Allah's word, everything follows His laws, and when we have decided to follow His path, then let Him, that is His laws, decide the outcomes of our efforts in relation to the human world in which we live. There's no harm in taking the name of Allah that it is Allah who does it. But at the back of our mind, we should always be conscious of this fact that it is through His laws we are operating, of course, in His presence. The Quran lays down these signs clearly for our guidance. We saw this in the account of Musa and Harun. His commands are such that when these are followed in all earnest, then these are bound to produce good. Here Allah sums it up firmly by stating, وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الْحَاكِمِينَ. He is always there to ensure the positive outcome of His commands and laws. Just stay on this path and never let your vision go astray. Over here, what I've done is I have put down some meanings of the word sabr. This is the root to keep striving persistently for the achievement of a desired goal. Basic meaning is of stability, firmness, and persistent struggle. From the view of being firmly at one place, this word also started to be used in the meaning of stopping someone. Hence, its meaning is also to imprison someone. It also means intrinsic courage, remaining steadfast. Some applications, and it's worth looking at more detailed meanings in the Lughatul Quran. A heap of grain which is produced with a lot of effort and hard work. We know that farmer needs a lot of patience, a lot of perseverance to get a good produce from his land. Those who are willing to tolerate the fire of hell despite being warned. In the meaning of remaining steadfast. Sabirin are those who face difficulties on the path of Allah and never weaken, slow down, and become overwhelmed. The kuffar stated that if they did not have sabr, then they would have given up the worship of their idols. We can see that people who follow wrong paths, how steadfast they are, how determined they are to keep following that path. And we should also learn from their steadfastness and even be more steadfast. Because once one is on haqq, then his conviction is sky high. Through sabr, efforts of Momineen become multiplied. It never means to accept the status quo and adopt a do-nothing attitude in the face of hardships and troubles under man-devised systems. And it never means that we just sit idle and do nothing about it. Quran is giving us a message of hope and asking us that the help of Allah is always available if we are willing to follow the procedure and process noted within the Quran. Finally, some general points from our study of the Quran so far. Since we are ending Surah Yunus today, I thought to put down some thoughts on some of the aspects which we covered, not only in this surah, but in the previous surahs as well. From our analysis of these surahs, we have witnessed that the Quran deals with the human psyche and channels the cognitive vision towards the human issues created by the man-devised systems. In this process, it reminds man as the most important creation of Allah for which the universe has been created. That is why he is endowed with the faculties of hearing, seeing, intellect, and together with this given choice and intent. Allah fully appreciates the hardships and difficulties faced by man under man-made laws and systems. And we have seen that all aspects which are related to human psyche, which have come out, we experience it. We know that these things are applicable to all of us. And as a result, we can see that in how much finer details the Quran has gone and asked us to look into our own strengths and weaknesses. However, he also draws our attention to this fact that the people who create such systems may seem to be very powerful and towering over the planet, but it is not true. The fountainhead of power is still in the hand of Allah. However, in order to benefit from this, Momineen need to emerge first and then work together for tapping into this resource. It is not a question of just understanding it theoretically. We have to be on this path, number one. Secondly, we must do salih deeds, not mechanically, as I said earlier, and Quran has drawn our attention towards this again and again, that you have to understand the procedure, the formula, the recipe of Iman and Salih deeds and the importance of coming together. Through examples from known history, the Quran informs us that corrupt beings who are not looking for guidance will usurp power and then compel humanity to live under the subjugation of laws made by them which look after their own vested interests. So we should take this thing out of our head that these people somehow will establish a benevolent system for the good of mankind. No way. If that was possible, then there was no need for the Quran. As a consequence of this, many among the enslaved masses will ponder on this evil system and will raise their weak voices, write about it, and endlessly propose solutions. But not much will appear to change in the outer world in the short term. Finally, some general points from our study of the Quran so far. So we go to the next slide. Allah then lays clearly before those who become Momineen the procedure and method for acquiring the power to establish the system of Deen. He states clearly and emphatically through his book that come together and create those selves voluntarily which possess the motivation, drive, character, and firm resolve to set out on this path in order to work on behalf of Allah. And this self-development is within our reach. Even under man-made system, we can do it, and we are doing it. So it is not something which is beyond our reach as is impossible. Because all messengers of Allah and the companions with them did it within the man-made systems initially. Then it tells us that what is noted in the Quran is about each one of you. It is not about those who have passed away. And I've quoted this verse here from Surah Al-Baqarah, Tilka ummatun qad khalat laha ma kasabat walakum ma kasabtum wala tusaluna amma kanu ya'malun. These are the people who are gone, their deeds with them, yours with you. You will not be questioned about what they did. Hence, get on with your task of getting ready for the system of Deen and that witness yourselves how things start to materialize before your very own eyes. It is important to know our past, but not to delve too much into it so that we get distracted. And sometimes one starts to becoming disheartened or even hopeless that at that time maybe their task was easier than us. This is not a question of a difficult task or an easier task. The issue is that Allah is there. His book is there. His help is available. And we have our own self within our own control. We should get on to the task of developing our own self and then coming together and then working together as far as possible within the man-device system and then see how the results come before us. Because if we start looking at the past and go too much into detail, we can be distracted because all those thoughts which are going in that direction should be utilized on our present and on what is given in the Quran. Next slide, we have seen how the Quran helps us to acquire a higher level of consciousness which enables us to gain an insight into those matters in the human world to which we did not previously have access. It has been an exciting journey through the book of Allah so far, and those members who have found a purpose in this journey are not going to go away as they have acquired that conviction called Iman in the word of Allah. This is what we covered in 1057. And Quran said, Wahudam wa rahmatul lil Momineen, that this is a guidance and rahmat for those who have become Momineen. And it asks us to feel this joy, فَلْيَفْرَهُ هُوَ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا يَجْمَعُونَ. In that, let them rejoice, that is better than what they hold. Finally, Inna Allaha la yugayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yugayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Verily, Allah will never change the condition of a people until they change what is within their own selves. It's all about human psyche, i.e., our own individual psyche. So it is up to us. And of course, we are continuing on this path of Allah. And with that, we come to the end of today's presentation. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen. Thank you.